Hey everybody, welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for the 31st of January. I can't believe how quickly this month has gone by. The other day I mentioned to you, I think it was yesterday, I mentioned about the psychologist, the counselor that was talking on the news about how to get through times like these. He talked about the only way through a problem is to go through a problem, to get through the other side. But he also talked about something else. It was about relationships and how important communications and relationships are, especially right now. He said, so many times people are on their phones, they're doing their thing on their phone. They're paying attention to this. They may indeed be communicating with someone else, but they're not in a relationship with someone. They're in a relationship with their phone. And he said these days, everything that's happening is all about siloing, about intentionally getting people to pay attention to one thing over here or one thing over here or something over here, that not allowing people to remember that we, by our very nature, are interpersonal, and that we can handle in our noggins more than one thing at a time, that we actually are quite brilliant at being in relationships with different people and doing different jobs and doing all kinds of different things, all while being essentially who we are. But our social media and the powers that be, the very people and institutions and authorities and influences that we're talking about why we need help, they're very intentionally trying to focus us on, we are in here, we only have ourselves, we're siloed, we have no one to lean on, it all has to be us, it all has to be about what we're worried about. And he said part of that is we need to break free from that. And he said it's very, very hard because, as I said, everybody's connected to this. Everybody is talking on their phone or using their iPad or the devices in their ears. And while it feels like, I'm friends with 945 people on Facebook, the question is, how many friends are you really friends with? You have 945 people who may or may not look at and see your face or your post on a social media feed. I, at any given time, might see only 20 or 25 people. I have to go searching for other people's posts from time to time. But the fact remains that we're not actually friends with them. We may indeed be friends with them in real life, but that's just, it's a way of connecting, kind of like when I was in university. And if we had to hand in an essay late or something, we'd have to put it in a file folder and then put it in a 1,000-miler. It was an envelope that had a string and the two little circles, and you'd zip them around and overloop, infinity sign and figure eight them and everything, and put it in, and then you'd put for who it's from. There'd be lines that would say from and to. So, from this person in this department to this person, this department, and then put it in the inter-university mail. 1,000-miler. It's going to go 1,000 miles. Like, that's sort of like what we're talking about, is that our technology is like those 1,000-milers. We take this piece of information and we put it in that envelope through Facebook or YouTube or whatever it is. And then on the other end, wherever it gets to, whether it's the right person or not, they open it up and they read it. And they may then respond by putting it back in the 1,000-miler, sending it back to us. But we haven't actually had a face-to-face conversation. We haven't had that synergy that comes with, talking about a theory or an idea or even politics that happens when you sit there and talk about, well, I understand what you're saying over here, but I don't agree with you. What about this? Like, oh, I haven't thought about that, or I didn't know that piece of information, and that changes everything. And the things that happen when we actually have the conversation with someone with whom we are intending to be in relationship. So not just a conversation with someone that, for instance, around politics, somebody that we are going to disagree with because they're liberal and you're a Democrat, or you're conservative, or you're a Republican and you're a Democrat. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about relationship where you can absolutely be a liberal and an NDP or a PC or a conservative, and you can still sit down and say, okay, so here's what I am. I'm a liberal or whatever. Here's what I bring to the table. Here are my preconceived notions that I bring to the table. And you say, well, you're a conservative, so you bring your preconceived notions to the table, and there they are. And then you have a conversation atop of those preconceived notions where you can say, well, I can see why you're saying that because you believe this, but what about this? Or, yeah, I can see your point. That makes sense. I hadn't thought of it that way, and going back and forth. And that's just simply when we're talking about politics. But sometimes he talked about sometimes we need to break the silos. We need to get out of those places where we realize we're only talking to one or two other people, or sometimes no one at all in a day. And we need to reach out to somebody and just have a positive human contact. A quick, hey, how are you? How was your day? Well, you got the flu? I hope you're getting better. I tried using vitamin C, the Flintstone kind. That kind of interaction where we're just looking out for each other. And in looking out for the other, we are also looking out for ourselves, because by reaching out to someone else, recognizing someone else needs somebody to talk to, we're giving ourselves someone to talk to as well. And he talked about the importance of making that effort. Now, for some generations, those of us who remember playing outside until the lights went out and your mother used a cowbell to call everybody home, and for people who remember bridge parties or pool, playing pool at the pool hall, or, shinny hockey leagues, they may remember a time, even if it's been a while, they might remember that rusty skill set of what it is to strike up a conversation, to pick up the phone and call someone, to go knock on the door and say, hey, you want to come sit on the front porch for coffee? It's a beautiful sunset. We can just talk about, the Blue Jays. That kind of thing. There's a couple of generations in our world that still remember those days before we could be instantly connected, and when we were actually had to physically go and be connected, or pick up a phone and be connected that way, versus texting, where we don't actually speak to one another. I think, though, there are a couple of generations that have come after me who actually have social anxiety about that, because they don't know how to instigate or to initiate that kind of interaction, social interaction. And that is a real honest worry for some people. Lots of our young people don't know how to make new friends. They don't know how to move into a new neighborhood and take their soccer ball and kick it up and down the street and wait to see who's intrigued and comes out to play with them, because they simply go in their bedrooms and close the doors and fire up their computers with their internet and play online games or watch somebody else gaming on YouTube. But the fact is that for those of us who remember back in the olden days when we did have to initiate interactions, that it really isn't that difficult. It just takes the get up and go, the energy to do it. And that's really important. Especially, he was talking, especially in this day and age, when everything in the politics around us is hate. Us versus them. You have to choose this. It's your way, my way, or the highway. I remember back after 9/11 when President Bush stood up at the big 2 days, I think it was like the 13th of September, and he had invited world leaders to come to Washington, and I believe he spoke in the House, and all the people were gathered there for sort of the State of the Union, and they were doing their thing, and he referred to almost every country as being friends, and didn't mention Canada. And Canada was the country that opened up Gander, Newfoundland, and allowed all those planes to arrive, and all of the people to be welcomed into their homes for days on end until things could get sorted out. And then he proceeded to say, if you're not for us, you're against us. And since that time, since that night, 24 years ago, that if you're not for us, you're against us mentality has just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And right now we are seeing that every day, executive orders, statements being made, congressmen and women, saying that this bishop should be deported because she spoke against Trump. And it's absolutely gotten ridiculous in the rhetoric and the us versus them. If you're not for me, you're against me. And if you're against me, you're automatically my enemy. And if you're automatically my enemy, then you need to be deported or killed. You need to be imprisoned. This is the kind of language that we're hearing. And what this counselor was talking about was the need for us to counter that language with the kind of language that says, hi, my name's Rachel. It's nice to meet you. Would you like to go for coffee? How are you doing? You must be exhausted. Are you scared too? when we actually begin to reach out and have face-to-face conversations, we start to build ourselves a new community that cannot be siloed as easily. And it gives us some resilience to be able to bounce back. This is a terrifying time that many people are living in. And I know that for some of my viewers, terrifying isn't even the right kind of word. But the fact is, there are certain things that can be done, sort of little in the moment things. They don't fix they don't solve the issue. They don't excise the cancer. But a few little things that can be done to help you deal with it as you're learning about it. And one of those things is definitely relationships. How do you make the effort to participate in a relationship, in a conversation, where you simply, by breathing the same air and speaking to each other and being calm and helping each other's heart rate to just lower itself and not be excited or worried or tense. You give yourselves moments of peace. And those moments of peace can help you when you have to go back to your silo. But they also help you recognize that silo is not permanent. You can exit your silo and go back into community whenever you like. And that's what we need to do. And that's exactly what the powers that be don't want us to do. They don't want us to have those rational conversations, those peaceful and peace-filling conversations. They want us to be scared and siloed and alone. And the best thing for us, for our health, for our mental health, our physical health, and also the health of our society, is for us to take a look at those conversations and say, this is what's helpful. Reaching out to my neighbor, seeing how they're doing, figuring out where we have common ground, acknowledging each other as human beings. Because when we do that, when we acknowledge another as a human being and they acknowledge us, then we've both been acknowledged. And it can give us hope and it can give us peace. And it may seem like a silly little thing, but all of the longest, most hazardous, most ridiculous journeys begin with a single step. And we are faced right now with a long, hazardous journey. But we're also faced with that single step. And that single step is that we can reach out to someone else and say, hi there, you're not alone. As you go into your weekend, remember that you're not alone. There are people around you to whom you can reach out. Pick up the phone, fire off an email. It's not ideal. It's so much better to be person to person. But when you can't be, sometimes it's wonderful to know that there's someone else there at the other end of an email chain. Take the chance to make a friend, to meet a new acquaintance, to do a new thing, and allow yourselves the ability and the possibility of being able to take a deep breath and let it out and feel the possibility that comes with being part of a community. Have a great day, everybody. God bless, and I'll see you again on Sunday for Gospel on the Go, or Monday for Church at Home with Rachel.